Welcome to another episode of Mystic Skeptic Radio. On today's show, our guest is Jamie Crawford. He's an independent journalist and investigator regarding the Epstein trafficking ring that, in my opinion, is being obfuscated by the media and has been pushed to the back of the news cycle as Trump continues to commit blunders, war crimes, and possibly dictatorial behavior. We're taping this in late June, and we'll be broadcasting it during our 11th season starting the fall. So, Jamie, welcome to the show. We wanted to know about your background and what is your interest in this particular case.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jamie, and I'm currently finishing off my master's degree in journalism at the University of Oregon. I was getting my bachelor's degree in biology in 2019. I was just wrapping up that degree when 2019 is the year, Epstein was arrested and died in prison, and uh, and so I was wrapping up my degree, and that along with a couple other things that was happening kind of in the news that year, it made me reevaluate my relationship with the term conspiracy theory, and I was also just kind of losing faith in the mainstream media, and uh, and also like I kind of stumbled into journalism by just kind of I just kind of realized that there's so many archives online at this point that have been accumulating for decades. And especially when it comes to these powerful, corrupt people, they've been leaving an online footprint for decades at this point, and uh, these archives are there to sift through for anyone who's willing to do the legwork to just kind of go and see what's been buried by time and kind of reevaluate maybe older artifacts on the internet with a fresh perspective with some of the context that we have today. And it's especially easy to do with Epstein related stories, uh, just because again, yeah, these are powerful people that have left an imprint online, and we have so much information about what was going on now, especially even just in the last like 6 months with the release of the Epstein files. We know a lot now, so when you go back and do some digging with some modern context, uh, it can change your perspective on things that wouldn't have been readily apparent, back in the day. And the Epstein story breaking in 2019 was a big reason why I pivoted away from uh, working on my biology degree and why I pivoted towards journalism. And I've been working at it for, about 5 years now. And I've been working on the biggest story of my career in the last year or so, and it's been about the Box nightclub in New York City and its relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. I received a tip that he had involvement there and that he may have even been an investor. And so I took that lead and went to the archives and I built a pretty expansive story on this subject. And this nightclub ended up just being the beginning. There were so many other threads to pull at once I just realized that there were so many other Epstein associates hanging out around this club, and some of them who really have flown under the radar compared to other Epstein associates. And so there've been a lot of threads to pull at, and this story is snowballed into one it's more than just about this nightclub. It's about hoteliers. It's about elite concierge services for the mega rich. It's about auction houses. It's about modeling agencies, and then even like suspected foreign spies and mass surveillance companies. So there's really a lot in this story that we can get into.
Well, you mentioned associates, but who's actually implicated? Because we had a previous guest on the show that tried to minimize the crimes and claim
Hmm.
that since Epstein was already convicted, there's really nothing to see and no one else is going to face prosecution.
Yeah.
So we can talk about all the people that knew him. We can talk about all the people that knew what he was doing. They were friends with him, even though he was a convicted human trafficker. And then nothing happens because there's no evidence. They're going to try to pull the statute of limitations. There's 1,000 victims. They were in Congress, and nobody has interviewed them or gone further with the leads. So
Hmm.
what are we to do, and how can we pressure the government to go after people that are through your research and the research of others? It's become very clear that they were actually implicated.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important thing to do is to use subpoena power and for Congress to subpoena a lot of these people to come in and have to testify in front of Congress. Um, because it's a lower threshold than to try and levy, criminal charges at someone. But if we can, I think so many of us just want to kind of uh, want to investigate this story in, just a very straightforward and organized manner. And to do that, I think the best way is to get people to testify in front of Congress. And I think there are so many people who maybe they're not guilty of anything more than just being associated with him, even after his initial arrest and prison time and conviction. But even those people should be coming in and saying what they know, maybe anything that they witnessed, even if in hindsight, maybe things that they saw that they didn't think much about at the time, but in hindsight, maybe they do. Um, and so yeah, I guess I just think subpoena power is the way to go when it comes to just getting people on the record talking about what they know. And I think there's a lot of people in my story that definitely should be subpoenaed. Simon Hammerstein, who is the owner of the Box nightclub, Andre Balazs, who is a luxury hotelier, and his ex-wife Katie Ford, who runs Ford modeling agency, and multiple of Epstein's victims have come forward and talked about Katie Ford and how since she ran Ford Modeling, which was for a long time the biggest modeling agency in the world, and multiple victims have come forward and said that Epstein was able to use this connection to Katie Ford to it was one of the ways he would groom his victims is offer them the chance to become models, Ford models. Maria Farmer has talked about this, and then Lisa Phillips. Uh, Lisa Phillips did become a Ford model. Lisa Phillips uh, is a victim of Epstein, a survivor of Epstein, and she was at one point working on a modeling job in like the British West Indies, and one of her friends or one of her fellow models invited her to this private island on one of their off days, and it ended up being Epstein's island. So Lisa Phillips went to the island, met him that night, had dinner with him, and then that night, uh, you know, she was, asked to give him a massage, and she was on a private island. She had no way to get away, and she was abused that night on the island. Um, she left the next day. She got the hell out of there and didn't want to ever look back. And she was avoiding his calls for months after that. And then I think about 4 months later, she eventually talked to him on the phone, and he knew she was a model. He remembered that at their dinner together, she had said her dream was to become a Ford model, and he said, "Hey, I know Katie Ford. I can get you a meeting with her." And so she took that opportunity. It was, it was her dream, and so she got a job at Ford Models. When she met with Katie Ford, apparently Katie Ford was just like, "Oh, I love Jeffrey," and yeah, and so and he had his clutches in her after that, right? Um, and yeah, and if we want to keep going on this topic too, like specifically, once I started going down this rabbit hole, I saw Lisa Phillips talked on a podcast about how Epstein and Katie Ford invited her to this like movie premiere party, and basically at this movie premiere party there was an A-list celebrity that was all over Lisa Phillips, and she talks about this on podcast, but she doesn't name the celebrity because she has an NDA with him. But she says he was all over her at the party, and then her boss, Katie Ford, invited her to an after party, but that after party ended up just being this celebrity's hotel room, his hotel suite, and then it was just a few of them there, and Lisa went to the bathroom to collect herself, and then like she wanted to leave. And when she came out of the bathroom, Katie Ford had left her there alone, so it was just her and the celebrity, and she was assaulted that night. Um, I was able to use some of the hints in that story. Basically, it was a movie premiere party. It was an A-list celebrity, uh, and she said it happened in the early 2000s. And I know that a lot of these celebrity gatherings, photographs from them end up on sites like Getty Images, which is like a photo archive. Everyone's probably seen images online with like the Getty Images watermark. Um, and so I started going through, I was looking up celebrity names and like starting with just like the celebrity names in the Black Book, like some people like Mick Jagger or like Alec Baldwin, Kevin Spacey, and just going to the that time period of the early 2000s, seeing like what I could find in the pictures. And I was exhausting all my possible name options, but then uh, I was looking up celebrities associated with Jean-Luc Brunel, and Jack Nicholson is one of them. And then I did end up finding a picture of Jack Nicholson and Lisa Phillips at a movie premiere party for one of his movies. And there's also in the archives uh, there's a story about Jack Nicholson at one point chasing another Ford model around the pool at one of Andre Balage's hotels, and Andre Balage is was Katie Ford's husband at the time. Um, and so all signs point towards it being Jack Nicholson and Lisa Phillips. She has to be careful because she did sign an NDA with him, but she's even after I broke that story, she referenced my story in other interviews, and so she's you know it definitely seems like it was Jack Nicholson. So so that's just one example of one of the many rabbit holes that this whole macroscopic story that started with the Box nightclub. It's just one of the many like avenues that this has led me down. Um, yeah. So sorry, I know that was a long tangent, but
No, that's one of the most revealing things from your research that it was in plain sight, like that you have dirtbag Hollywood famous people and women who become vulnerable because they're all lawyered up, they are being cornered and put in weird situations. You know, a lot
mm,
of people were saying that Weinstein wasn't really uh, like perpetrator or predator. He was more like an opportunist.
mm,
Same with Cosby. So a lot of people are sexist in that way or enabling in that way where they try to, dismiss it.
mm,
Nick Fuentes was saying that Epstein wasn't really a trafficker, that he was just a creep. Trump has done similar things. But I want to go to the beginning of this whole situation because it's very confusing. And I think what makes it confusing is that there's so many people involved. There's so many people who are supporting each other in these type of perversions. And I can see someone looking at your expose on the box and saying, "Well, you're kink shaming people because they're weird and into perverted stuff," but that's not a crime. If if a bunch of adults pee on each other or
sure.
do naughty things, what does that have to do with this guy being a pedophile and trafficking young girls?
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, I try not to be a Puritan, and yeah, if it's all adults and it's all consensual, then yeah, I'm nobody to judge. Um, And so yeah, a lot of the stuff that goes on at the box is yeah, jaw-dropping, but if all done consensually is fine. Like there's stories of like Leonardo DiCaprio getting condoms emptied upon him, Susan Sarandon having vomit spewed all over her. But there's also stories about apparently once Owen Wilson and Kate Hudson stormed out because they did a vaudeville act on stage that used a live baby, a human crying baby. Um, so that's obviously not cool. And in building the story, I was able to gain access to a an in-house documentary that the Box produced about themselves, and it was never supposed to see the light of day. And there is a line in in this documentary, and it's from one of their top performers. It's this guy named Raven O, and he became an icon at the Box, and he was like the MC. So really one of the top performers, and in this in-house documentary, uh, in one of his talking heads, he's reminiscing, and he's saying, oh, he says if I wanted to do a show that was about pedophilia. or if I wanted to do a show that was political, then he's like the owners, Simon and Richard, they would just say, "Yeah, let's do it." And so he says it right there. That he said that he was allowed to do shows about pedophilia. Whatever that means, it's a little vague, but it's I'll tell you this. I reached out to the box with all my questions. I asked them about all their connections to Epstein, which I laid out to them and which we can go through in a bit. And I asked them about that line in that documentary. I asked them what their top performer meant when he said he was allowed to put on shows about pedophilia. And they didn't answer any of my questions. Instead, they sent me a cease and desist. They threatened me with up to $150,000 in statutory damages because they referred to that documentary that I acquired journalistically. They called it stolen material. It wasn't stolen. Uh, and because I put it on my Patreon page, it's a really explicit documentary and should not be viewed by children. So it's behind a paywall on my Patreon. And so they said I was, benefiting from copyrighted material, stolen material, and yeah, and threatening $150,000 in statutory damages. And, I've consulted with lawyers about this, and there is no way for them to collect statutory charges for that copyright unless they have a copyright registration number. And to get a copyright registration number, you have to jump through quite a few hoops, and you have to like submit this media to the Library of Congress. And this isn't copyrighted material. I asked them for the registration number, they didn't provide one. And so yes, I think they have squandered any benefit of the doubt there. That I asked them straight up, what did your performer mean when he said he was allowed to put on shows about pedophilia? And they tried to intimidate me into silence. They told me to delete the footage, remove it from all my platforms, and permanently delete it from, my hard drives and all that. Uh, so I think that's pretty telling that that's their response to these questions. It's just to try and intimidate an independent journalist into silence. So, so yeah, you know, if it's just celebrities at these clubs pissing and shitting on each other con consensually among adults, that's ultimately fine. But we have reason to believe that there's darker things going on there, based on this admission from the performer, and again, all of the connections to Epstein, which we can get into here in a bit if you want, because they're quite extensive.
Okay, so some of the retractors or people would say, if it was such a vast conspiracy, how come it never got out? If it implicated both Democrats and Republicans, why the Democrats arrested Epstein and the Republicans released some of the evidence? And then if it was the Mossad, why is there still living victims if they're known for, hiding stuff, or same with the CIA? What would you say to people that feel that it is almost like uh, Steve Bannon style of overwhelming the media and all of us with
Flooding the
some
zone.
floating the zone to the point where we don't even know what's true anymore? Um, what would you say to people that go the other way, instead of saying there's a vast conspiracy and they're all demon possessed, sacrifice children and stuff like that, to this kind of like, who would be that stupid to be sending emails from their personal account about human trafficking and sex with minors? How would you respond to all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the revelations from the Epstein files is the ineptitude of some of these people. Uh, yeah, I think a lot of things can be true at once. I think these people can be very powerful, but they're not all powerful. And, they can be cunning, but they're still humans, and humans make mistakes. And and I think it is possible um to capture powerful people through honeypotting. And if you have someone in a sexually compromising situation, you can have power over that person, and so you can have influence and sway in those kind of ways, but it's not an infallible system. And so I think obviously Epstein's operation was on some level effective and successful because he got away with it for decades. Um, but now it is coming out, so things did leak. So yeah, you have on one extreme, say people kind of the way you put it, there's on one extreme, there's the people who think it's like just the ultimate conspiracy, and they're all, demons eating children, all powerful lizard people. And then sure, there's people on the other extreme who are just completely dismissing the entire thing as it's all, yeah, it's all nonsense, nothing to see here. But the answer really does lie somewhere in the middle, uh, right? Like there was clearly a lot of corruption going on, a lot of sex trafficking uh, for the pleasure of Epstein and his friends, but also as a way of getting dirt on people. And and it worked for a while, but it eventually caught up with him. Uh, you know, he became a very, very powerful person, but ultimately still not like an all-powerful you know, God, like he is still a human within a human system, and there's always going to be competing factions with different interests, and life is messy, the world is messy. So, um, so I don't know if that kind of answers your question a bit on kind of the way I view all
Sure.
this. Yeah.
Do you know much about his original mentors? Whitney Webb was talking about Jamal Kachowski and Stephen Hoffenberg. That when you start going back to the beginning of, and that's where people think he was a plan from the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, or the Mossad, or something like that. That he became too rich too quick, and he had too much influence. But then
Hmm.
you see that there is allegations of him doing money laundering for Russians, for Saudis, working with the previous State Department guy, Barr, and all these very powerful men that they were kind of setting him up to become their middleman. Is that where you see the rise of Epstein, or do you think that it is some kind of MK Ultra, perfect spy who had so much to gain or to give to all the different intelligence agencies from around the world?
Yeah, so I think if you look at Epstein's life and trajectory, he seemed to kind of level up over time. He got a job at the Dalton School, and that he was hired by William Barr's father, yeah, Bill Barr's father, to work, and he didn't even have the proper credentials to have that job. And it's like, this is like an elite boarding school, and he didn't have the credentials to work there, but he got a job there. And William Barr's father is a strange character. He wrote a weird sci-fi book that was basically all about like this alien race and how the elites did a lot of sex trafficking and sex slavery. Uh, so I haven't read that book. I've been meaning to at some point. It sounds bizarre. So yeah, so Epstein he got this job at the Dalton School, and again he didn't have the credentials to get there. So who knows? Like did he get that job through you know what became his MO, which was blackmail, or 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 did someone elevate him to that position and look the other way because he was stuck. Some people do think he was ultimately a construct and granted power. So yeah, I think a big question with Epstein along the way is, yeah, did he seize power or was he given power? Did he take it by force or was he given it so that he could be a useful tool for like a Mossad or something like that? So those are legitimate questions to ask, and they're very interesting questions. And then yeah, and after the Dalton School, that he ended up on Wall Street after that, and yeah, working with Stephen Hoffenberg. Um, just real quick, while we're on Hoffenberg, I'd like to say that Hoffenberg has said that Epstein had an expression for uh, when he would scam and screw his wealthy targets, and he called it playing the box. And course, it's my story about him being an investor and potentially a key role, having a key role in the inception of this club, the Box, where the rich and powerful would get into sexually compromising situations. And so I just think it's either an interesting coincidence or it explains something legitimate. The fact that his go-to expression for scamming and screwing his wealthy targets was yeah, playing the box.
Well, and
Um,
Steve Hoffenberg is known as a Ponzi scammer, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hoffenberg basically took the fall for the Ponzi scheme him and Epstein were running. Um, and then people who have worked for Epstein said people who worked for him in like the early 90s said like before 1992 he was rich, he was a like very rich guy, but they've said that something happened around 1992 and he went from like really rich to like
Okay. Okay.
really rich. And
So, so
I find that interesting. It's in 1992, that's around the time Ghislaine's father Robert Maxwell died, and he died in October 1992, and she moved to America right away. And
I hate to
uh,
interrupt you, but
what was that?
did that have anything to do with the Clintons? Because I could not believe how Weasley and slippery they were during their deposition.
Hmm.
So, what do you know about the Clinton Epstein connection? Because wasn't he president around that time?
Yeah. Clinton was president in 1992. That was the year he was elected, right? Yeah. So okay, yeah. So yeah, I think yeah, Epstein. Yeah, Clinton was elected. It would have been at the end of 1992. He would have taken office in early 1993, if I'm getting my math correct. Um, so I don't know if Clinton had anything necessarily to do with Epstein's rise, uh, but obviously they're connected. I mean, I think I couldn't tell you the exact number, but there's reporting that Epstein visited Clinton's White House, numerous times. And obviously, like like Ghislaine was at their daughter's wedding. I did one of my first stories years ago that I put on YouTube was I just went since Ghislaine was at the Clinton daughter's wedding. Uh, I went back and just looked at news footage from the wedding back at the time, and just saw, and I just put it together this compilation of so many people across mainstream media back when the wedding was happening in like I think like 2010. Just them all just saying like, oh, it's going to be such an exclusive guest list to only people who are really close to the Clintons and their daughter will be at this wedding, and that was just like I just put a compilation together of so many different pundits saying that, and it's like, okay, well, Ghislaine was there, so apparently she was quite close with them. Since then, they've tried to come out and say that she was a plus one, but she had an aisle seat too. That's kind of prime real estate at a wedding. Um, but yeah, the Clintons, yeah, I think they were definitely involved to an extent, but I think a lot of people try and put up, there's clearly like a somewhat of a dichotomy of, there's Epstein really had close relationships with two presidents, Trump and Clinton, one left, one right. Uh, and so it's easy to kind of draw those comparisons. But I will say, like, I think Trump is looking a lot more guilty than Clinton. Uh, I found it kind of funny how in the birthday book that came out, which is a disgusting document, right? What's disgusting about it is that almost every single person who wrote into it, almost every single, birthday card in there is like full of innuendo and like wink, wink, nod, nod, haha, we're all pedophiles together and we're all getting away with it. And like, but I just remember thinking it was almost a bit funny that the only card in there that seemed quite normal was Clinton's. It's like he was the only one that basically wasn't saying like, yeah, haha, wink, wink, nod, nod, we're
Jamie.
pedos.
So Jamie,
It's
there's pictures of Clinton in hot tubs with young girls. There's pictures of him getting massages, and that's the thing that his ridiculous wife was saying. We've all been in a hot tub and we don't know who gets in there. We've
yeah.
all received a massage. And it's
Hmm.
like, come on, man, we know this guy is a sexual deviant,
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
he flies on the plane. The other
Hmm.
guy flew on the plane, and he's also a dirtbag, but there's a little bit more evidence of Clinton, and I keep hearing progressives try to tone down the Clinton connection. Why is that?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to tone it down. Like I definitely think that relationship was problematic. And if he's guilty, then yeah, throw the book at him. Throw the book at anyone who is legitimately implicated. So I mean, I don't think you'll catch too many like progressives protecting Clinton because again, Clinton's a neoliberal, and most progressives are far to the left of Clinton. Like most progressives loathe the Clintons. You're more likely to see more corporate Democrats protecting Clinton, but I don't think you really do see that, to be honest. No, yeah, I think uh, they do have a lot to answer for. I'm glad that they were deposed. Uh, and yeah.
Okay, so I saw on your Reddit. Well, I could see it through at Reddit, but I couldn't see it through Substack. So I don't know if there's special access to the whole story. You had a video. Was that created by the box where it had little children eating pizza and then saying they wanted to drink grape juice? What is the source for that? And do you have any inkling that some of the Podesta allegations are true? And I hear that the FBI said that there's certain code language when it comes down to child pornography and rape and all kinds of deviant behavior that is harmful to victims. And then everybody wants to say that that's ridiculous and there's no way. Tell us the connection with that video.
So that video was put out by the Standard Hotel, which is owned by Andre Balazs. And Andre Balazs is one of the key figures in my story. And so again, like I said, once I had the lead about the box, it led me in a lot of different directions. And one of the first faces I started like kind of clocking as seeing over and over again was this guy Andre Balazs because he has kind of a unique kind of striking face, and I was noticing him showing up a lot. And he is the ex-husband of Katie Ford, who I talked about earlier, who owns Ford Models and who basically procured Lisa Phillips to Jack Nicholson with the help of Epstein. So Andre Balazs is a luxury hotelier. He owns a Standard Hotel. He owns the Mercer. He owns the Chiltern Firehouse. He owns the Chateau Marmont in LA, and yeah, and he owns a Standard in New York. And yeah, I just found that yeah that weird children's pizza party video for the Standard Hotel. And yeah, obviously with all the Pizzagate stuff, it does make it seem a bit eerie and creepy, especially since yeah they don't just talk about pizza in this video. They mention grape soda and like Justin Bieber, and the whole video is just yeah a bunch of different kids. Uh and I think with when the Epstein files came out in January of this year, it definitely made a lot of people reevaluate the legitimacy of Pizzagate. I think a lot of people before this year had even people who are giving the whole Epstein story its due, and people who are legitimately like interested in the story and want more attention on it. I think even a lot of them had dismissed Pizzagate and thought that was like a step too far and like kind of just like lunacy. But the Epstein and I was kind of in that camp too, to be honest. Like uh, I mean, I don't think I was like fully well versed in Pizzagate before the last year, but yeah, the Epstein files has definitely made it seem even more legitimate, and that the people in Epstein emails do seem to be using code words, and it makes sense that they'd be using code words, right? Like. Uh, And again, it's like in the birthday book too. There's so many like wink wink nod nods. There's the and yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
Well, let's talk about it in a macro way. So, some people would say that human trafficking has been occurring since the time of the pharaohs,
Sure.
and we're recording from the human trafficking capital of the world, which is Houston, Texas. They say there's more human trafficking here than anywhere else because it's a port city, and they have people coming from all over the world.
I didn't
So,
know that. Wow.
yeah, so when people want to say, well, there is human trafficking everywhere, and children and women are being abused everywhere. And these guys just happen to be rich and powerful. Do you think that some of the fears that they were doing experiments, transhumanism, some type of manipulation of powerful people and stuff like that, that because people like Alex Jones, who's a lunatic, would say that the victims were just the cherry on top. There was a lot of other nefarious, weird stuff that was going on under that, and it's known that in some fields, when people are very powerful, they get egged on. It's almost like a gang initiation to go do something outrageous, and then it's a bonding thing for
Yeah.
those type of creeps. Do you think that people are kind of jaded and are not taking it that seriously because we have a pandemic of lack of respect and love for fellow human beings, for women and children to be protected? We have to have a higher consciousness and a more civic society. Do you think that the corruption has become so great that that's why this is not being pursued?
Yeah, yeah. So, when you liken it to gang initiation, I do think there's something to that, and that I think we see the Epstein class. We see the people at the top. They have such they have such class solidarity with each other. They really are seem to be in lockstep, way more than the rest of us are, unfortunately. And it makes sense that like getting people on camera doing a heinous act that that if it ever got out, would cause society to revolt against that person and want to, charge them criminally and cancel them culturally, and they wouldn't be able to, participate in civil society, public society anymore if like this heinous footage gets out. It makes sense that like these people would want to get that to have that on each other because it would create this web of mutually assured destruction, right? If everyone has shit on each other, it means that they can ultimately trust each other, that they'll work together as a team to fuck the rest of us over. And so, yeah, I think there definitely is something to that. Like, obviously not all billionaires can be pedophiles, right? Like it's problematic to see how many seem to be, but it would be like even if some of them don't have those inclinations, they might you know I think some people as they ascend to that level of society, maybe that is part of the initiation, just to have that mutually assured destruction. So I think there definitely could be something to that. It's I don't know if we have any necessarily hard evidence of that, but when you logic your way through it, it makes sense. I'll say this. There was the trip to Africa on Epstein's plane. That was Clinton and Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker. Uh, and so yeah, they said it was a humanitarian trip flying around Africa, but when you have Epstein and Clinton and Kevin Spacey all together, like what do these guys all have in common, right? They're all, sexual deviants, predators. Uh, and so I was interested to go back through the archives, and I wanted to see if I could find any. It was I believe it was September 2002 when they went on that trip. So I went to the kind of those dates in the archives and was looking at different Kevin Spacey interviews to see if I could find any of him talking about the trip. And I did. He went on this like technology show, and it was called Screensavers, which is already kind of like an obsolete term. Uh, and in it, he pulls out this little digital camera from his pocket. And in 2002, I guess it's pretty state of the art to have a handheld digital camera that can fit around your pocket. And he's talking in the interview, and he just goes, he's like, "Hey, I just took a recent trip to Africa, and it was great having this old camera on me because I could just pull it out at a moment's notice and take pictures." And this is on a trip with Epstein, who again, Epstein, who had cameras everywhere at all of his properties and clearly used them to get leverage on people. And so if you're someone like Kevin Spacey who has arisen to that echelon of society through your acting and you kind of realize that that's the game, like why wouldn't you try to get some pictures of your own, get some evidence of your on your own so that you can, you know, you can throw your weight around uh with the big boys. So and then when Clinton, or I mean, sorry, when Kevin Spacey did, get, canceled during like the height of the Me Too movement, he he gave that bizarre he did that bizarre video called Let Me Be Frank. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where he was talking to the camera as his Frank Underwood character. And it's a bizarre video. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it later. It's just bizarre. Everyone when they watched it at the time thought like this makes no sense as a public relations move, because he didn't make himself look any less guilty. It was just an incredibly creepy video. But I've done a story in the past on this that people can go check out, and my theory is that he didn't make that video as a public relations move. He made it as a private relations move, and like it's quite easy to read between his words in this video, and it kind of seems like if I go down, I'm going to take some of you with me. It's kind of the vibe I get from this video, and so yeah, I think all of these people do get dirt on each other, and yeah.
Have you done any research on the Villa Arabesque in Acapulco, Mexico?
No, no, I
So
know nothing about that.
what I found out about it is that very similar to the box, it's a place where rich people from all over the world go and party. And I think there was someone that ran out after being attacked. They have models, they have beautiful people that come through. Um, does that ring a bell at all?
Are you talking about the footage of that one female model who's like hysterical crying, talking about how they were eating people and stuff?
That one's actually in my hometown in Monterrey, Mexico. This one in Acapulco, I think there was someone else who spoke to the locals or spoke to a news agency and told them that there was a lot of funky stuff going in there.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you've seen also the video where they're interviewing John McCain's wife, and she says, "We all knew about Epstein, but nobody knew how to get to him legally." So what's scary about this is that it was all in front of our faces, and that so many people felt like it was just part of you know he was connected to media moguls, he was connected to scientists and financiers and
Hmm.
politicians. So again, going back to, are these people so corrupt morally and socially that they can't even see how disgusting this is? There was a congressman a while back that he was sexting his pages, and somehow he thought he could get away with it. Do you think there's some delusion that happens when people are that rich, that they're kind of blatant about it and they don't think they're ever gonna get caught?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of these people feel untouchable, and you know, for a lot of reasons,
Well,
they, you know, for a long time it wasn't even delusional for them to feel untouchable. Times have changed, and it's been a very recent development, and I think it's partly the te technology of the times. Uh, that now, obviously the Me Too movement itself was like a product of the internet and survivors able to kind of find each other basically online, and like it connected people in a way that wasn't before possible. And like I wouldn't be trying to be a journalist in any other era because the internet has democratized journalism and it allows you to do journalism now without going through one of these monolithic mainstream media institutions. Um, so yeah, I think they did feel untouchable for a long time, and because they had been untouchable for all of history until very recently. And yeah, and there probably was, and some of them probably were kind of getting off on flaunting it. You saw that with people like Jimmy Savile in the UK, if you're familiar with him. But you know, he would tell jokes on talk shows and stuff that was basically alluding to his predation, but it was always just laughed off as, oh, that's just Jimmy being Jimmy. And I think on one level, it was him getting off on, yeah, the danger of like flaunting it. But it also, on some level, also kind of acted as a smokescreen with someone like him. Like, it was almost like it wasn't just about getting off on it. It also could have been a strategic thing to kind of be like, oh, if I'm so open about it and joke about it so openly, like maybe it'll make people think, oh, like it can't be true because why would he be flaunting it if it was true? So,
So tell us about your research on him, Princess Diana, and Trump, and how are they connected to Epstein?
yeah, yeah. Uh, I have a story about Jimmy Savile and Diana because so there was a Netflix documentary about Jimmy Savile that came out in I think 2022, and after that documentary, the people who had put it together, they auctioned off a lot of his things and possessions that were kind of like gathered for the production of that documentary. And one of the things that got auctioned off was this letter from Princess Diana to Jimmy Savile, uh, and it was from 1995. And before this was auctioned off in 2023, it had no online footprint. This was not a public document until just a few years ago. And it's from Princess Diana to Jimmy Savile, 1995, and it's a bizarre document. Everyone should go read it. It starts with her just say the first thing she says in this letter to him is like, "Hey Jimmy, like we've been out of touch for so long, and I'm sure you're just noticing that I'm still alive too." And like obviously that jumped out to me right away as like if anything it's just a bit of a morbid foreshadowing of her eventual death 2 years later. But when I looked up the timeline of kind of just what was going on in her life at this time, uh the brakes on her car had just failed her. Uh and like yeah, this is a few years before her eventual death, but a lot of people know that she was paranoid about dying in a car accident. And pe people think that's like it makes her eventual death look suspicious that this was specifically what she was afraid of happening. But the reason she was afraid of it happening is because the brakes on her car failed, and she thought it was due to tampering. And this is in the Paget report, which was the investigation into her death done by the British Metropolitan Police. And so in the Paget report, one of her friends kind of says it happened sometime in 1995, but she couldn't be sure when. Uh, One of her lovers, Hasnet Khan, uh, he said it happened in 1995, and he couldn't pinpoint when, but he said he remembered asking her why why she had changed cars. She used to drive this uh, oh man, she ended up driving a BMW. Before that, yeah, she was driving an Audi. So she had a signature Audi that she was driving, and when her lover asked her why she wasn't driving the Audi anymore, she said it was because the brakes had been tampered with. And so I went into the newspaper archives. Newspapers.com is a great resource for journalists because all the newspapers, and it's like millions and millions of newspapers, and they're all archived and digitized, so like you can search keywords. And so in this vast archive of newspapers, the last mention I can find of her driving this Audi is in late September of 1995, and the first mention of her driving this BMW is in late October of 1995. So this is the time period where her brakes were tampered with, and this is when she's sending a letter to Jimmy Savile saying, "Hey, you might just be noticing that I'm still alive." And she thought her husband Charles and his, the establishment around him were the ones that were behind this, and Jimmy Savile was part of that. At one point she described Jimmy Savile as a mentor to Prince Charles, uh, and so it makes sense why she would think that he was somewhat involved in this. Uh, so she says, "You might just be noticing I'm still alive," and then she also says a little bit later in the letter, she says, "I'm about to go to Broadmoor, which is a mental hospital where he was preying on the victims there." And she says, "I'm about to go to Broadmoor," and then in parentheses she put temporarily, which is a joke, basically saying like I'm going there to visit. I'm not going there because I'm a head case. Uh, but so she makes two jokes, two identifiable jokes in this letter. One is saying, "Hey, I'm not dead," and the other is saying, "Hey, I'm not brain damaged." And that was basically the wording that she used with her lawyer when she met with her lawyer that month, saying that she thought there was a plot to kill her. And then she basically said there's a plot to either kill me or make me so un injure me to the point that I'm so unbalanced that I need to be in a mental institution. So the what she is telling her lawyer, she's afraid of. She is kind of hinting at to Jimmy Savile in this letter in this way that on the face of it looks like she's kind of just making offhand jokes, but with all this context, it seems antagonistic. And and if you view the whole letter through an antagonistic lens, it seems like she knows what he was doing at Broadmoor Hospital. And if she knew what she was doing at what he was doing at Broadmoor Hospital, well, that's revelatory. There's been no concrete evidence of that. And uh, you know, with the Savile stuff, it seems like it was somewhat of an open secret, and but Prince Charles has always tried to, say through the benefit of the doubt that he didn't know about Savile's, sick nature and his crimes. But I think if Diana knew, then it's a lot harder for Charles to claim that he didn't. And I think this story that I built around this letter makes a very compelling case that Diana knew what was going on at the hospitals, and she was kind of trying to do what she could behind the scenes to stand up to Savile.
How much more time can you give us?
I don't know where to be.
Okay, because what's the connection with Trump? And then we're going to talk about Virginia Giuffre and
Okay,
how she claimed that Trump had nothing to do with Epstein, and he was actually trying to reveal all Epstein's crimes, which
okay,
sounds crazy. And we're also going to talk about Alan Dershowitz,
okay.
how he threatened a lot of people legally. But
Hmm.
so in the article, it's called "The Princess, the President, and the what?"
And the pedophile.
And the pedophile.
Yeah.
So how is Trump connected to Diana and this British crazy guy?
Yeah. So that story is about, yeah, Princess Diana, Epstein, and Trump. Savile isn't connected to that story. And yeah, basically, Michael Wolff has reported uh, that Epstein and Trump basically had a a gentleman's bet, I guess you could call it, even though it's the furthest thing from being a gentleman. They had a bet that on who could be the first one to sleep with Princess Diana. Uh, there's some reporting that Epstein was had like been like Diana's like basically date for a couple of evenings. There was one night in specifically where Diana like while she was like going through her divorce with Charles like showed up to some event in this like stunning dress that got like photographed by paparazzi and ended up in the media. And there's some reporting in the Epstein files that talks about Epstein being like her date for that evening. And in Epstein's closet, he had a framed newspaper of a newspaper with that iconic picture of Diana in her what was called the revenge dress. And so yeah, so that's interesting. And then Uh, um, there's footage of from CNN from 2015. It was during Trump's first presidential run, and it was with a journalist Bob Beckel, who is now deceased, and he was going on the CNN show, and he didn't give the full story. He said that he was pursuing a story that was about Trump and Diana, and he's not ready to talk about it yet. But he was like, let's just say Trump has like, and this is off of memory, so I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he says something along the lines of like, I think Trump has more sexual issues. Uh, you know, I forget the exact wording off the top of my head, but yeah, he's basically saying that Trump has some skeletons in the closet when it comes to his uh, uh, sexual conduct, and that was something Diana related. And he said he was about to fly over to England and talk with the relevant parties. Obviously, Diana was deceased, but she has family members. Her brother is in Epstein's Black Book, by the way. Her brother and in the Black Book, the name is Charlie Althorpe, and their manor is Althorpe Manor, and so I think that's why that's kind of gone under the radar, is because his name is in there in a unusual way. But I digress. Um, so yeah, so this guy Bob Beckel, he talks about how he was gonna go over and seemingly talk to Diana's family about a letter, some letter between Trump and Diana, and apparently it was gonna. Bob Beckel thought it could have the potential to lose Trump the election. But then nothing ever came of it. So it seems like Diana's family, never didn't want to give up this letter. They're probably somewhat worried about their legacy. And so given that, and then this reporting from Michael Wolff that there was some kind of competition between Trump and Epstein about Diana, I'm just kind of curious if Epstein is somehow wrapped up in that letter. And then what's interesting too is like when Trump gets asked about Diana in this time frame in 2015, he really downplays the reporting on him because he went on Howard Stern a bunch of times kind of throughout the early 2000s, and in those he kind of going on Howard Stern and doing the kind of crass Trump jokes that he usually does. He talks about how he's would love to sleep with Diana and all this stuff. Jokes about how he wanted to take an AIDS test first because she obviously famously hugged someone with AIDS when people were still scared of AIDS and thought you couldn't even touch someone with it. Um, so it was all documented that he had some interest in Diana. I think he even wrote about it in one of his books. Uh, about how he would have loved to court Lady Diana. But then in 2015, when this Bob Beckel guy was working on this story uh, about Trump and Diana, Trump really changed his tune. Piers Morgan asked Trump about it, and Trump was just he just blatantly lied. He's like, "Oh, well, I've never said anything about Diana." Da da da. He really downplayed it and said he never sent her flowers and all this stuff. Uh, so he was lying about it then. But then years passed, he obviously became president, and then a few years ago he released this book called Letters to Trump, and it's just letters from all the celebrities that used to send him fawning letters and stuff. And the thesis of the book is to show oh, look at all these people that loved me before I became president, and now they all hate me. Uh, but in this book, Letters for Trump, he does include a letter from Diana where she thanks him for sending her the flowers and everything. Uh, One of her friends has talked about this too. Her friend says Diana didn't she was actually quite creeped out by Trump and didn't know what to do about the flowers and all this. But so yeah, so Trump has this weird arc with Diana where yeah, he used to talk quite openly about his interest in her, and then this journalist Bob Beckel was looking into this strange letter between him and her that he thought could cost him the election, and at that time Trump really tried to downplay the situation with her and said he never sent her flowers, and uh but yeah, and then years later he eventually released the letter that Diana sent him back, like, kind of politely thanking him for the flowers. So he's been all over the place on it, which, obviously looks a bit
Let's move
like
on.
suspicious, but
Let's move on to the possibility of Trump being a pedophile pervert like Epstein.
mm,
So although there's footage of him hanging out with Epstein, looking at young girls, making jokes about how Epstein likes them on the young side, um, some, sexist, male chauvinist guys would say, why would someone so rich, so powerful, who could have any woman he wants, who has actively cheated on all his wives, who possibly even got involved with Princess Diana. Why would someone like that risk it all to do unspeakable acts with minors? Um, you would have to be out of your mind if you have that much access to every other kind of person. How would you respond to something like that?
well, I'd say, well, what about Epstein? Epstein was powerful, rich. He had access to all these women too, and he was clearly risking it all to, still indulge in his darkest predilections. So, yeah, I think that would be a silly argument to make. Yeah, there's, tr footage of Trump talking about, how he'd run these, Miss Teen America pageants and how he gets it. Since he ran them, he was allowed to walk into the locker rooms when they were naked and stuff and check them out. And he's talking about teenagers. And this is just what he offers up openly. And so yeah, it's I think these men, they can get any woman they want, and and a lot of them do indulge in both women of age and yeah, and they also go younger and they get a thrill out of that. Um, it's it. Uh, I've heard some survivors talk a bit about how like with Epstein, he seemed to he almost he almost divided up like his pursuits by location, so to speak. So like when he was in Palm Beach, that's where he got a lot of the teenagers because yeah, that's where he had Ghislaine, going around malls and schools and picking up like teenagers from broken homes in Palm Beach because those were easy, damaged girls, easy to kind of get their clutches in. But then when he was in New York, that's when he was really indulging in like models and stuff who were like of age but still young and like people like Lisa Phillips, like Lisa Phillips became a Ford model and she was like 21 years old when Jack Nicholson assaulted her. And obviously like assault is assault, rape is rape, no matter what age, and like that's still heinous. But so I think when Epstein was uh, yeah, kind of in New York, he'd kind of be preying on girls who were of age, but there was still power imbalances and manipulation and consensual issues with it still being like non-consensual and coercive. Um, and then yeah, and on this subject, I'll also just say that one of the most interesting rabbit holes that this story about the box led me towards was this company called Quintessentially, which is also connected to the box very intimately. And Quintessentially is an elite concierge service for the elites, and like uh, the uh, the only time I've ever seen them kind of like make a blip on like the public's radar was they were actually the company that was they were the middlemen between the like the billionaires and that submarine that went to see the Titanic that imploded a few years ago. So quintessentially, they were the middlemen that hooked that up because that's what they do. They're a concierge service for billionaires, and so it's and like even on the face of it, it's bizarre. Like there's articles about how like they like psycho profile their clients just so they can give them really specifically curated experiences because their clientele are basically billionaires who have fried their dopamine receptors from doing everything and they're just desperate to feel something. And there's like talk of quintessentially like they talk about how they gave one client a 3-month kidnapping experience, whatever that means. Um, so So that's the thing. That's I think this is one of the key problems we see with this billionaire class is that these people do uh, have it all, and they fry their dopamine receptors, and so they do have to keep pushing the limits of uh, decency and morality just to feel something. Like, I don't think the human brain is built for that level of power. Uh, it's the human psyche. It's so. Uh, and so the reason I bring all this up in terms of your like question about like Trump and Epstein and like why would they risk it all is because these people are eventually when you have this kind of wealth and power, I think people are kind of uh yeah, they're pushed to their limits in terms of just wanting to feel some kind of dopamine rush when they've already had it all, and uh you get pushed to further and further taboos, and you see that at the box too. Like that's the reason why the box is so degenerate and depraved. Uh, even when they're just even when the like the consensual stuff, but that's still just like grotesque. Like there's so many acts that are just all about like piss and shit and vomit, and it's just you know.
So, Jamie, what do you know of Virginia Giuffre? She and Trump claimed that she used to work at Mar-a-Lago, and then
Hmm.
Trump and Ghislaine came and stole her. I mean, Epstein and
Hmm.
Ghislaine
Yeah.
stole her,
Yep.
and then that Trump was never around when she was abused, and she was abused by big names that she could not mention, also because she was under threat of being sued. And then she dies mysteriously by suicide after being in a car accident. Um, can the stuff that she said sounds very conspiratorial and almost like UFO-like at the end of her life.
Hmm.
Do you think that she's getting paid by Trump to diffuse some attention, or do you think that she's only saying based on her convictions and what she saw? What's your reading on her case?
Yeah, I think she lived a really sad life, even from the beginning. I haven't read her book yet. I've been meaning to, but she was abused by apparently by her father at a young age, and then she was trafficked to like another wealthy man before she even met Epstein when she was young, and then obviously she ended up in Epstein's clutches, and so I think she lived a really really sad life, and then she ended up being really strong. Are you still there? You lost your camera. Oh.
Sorry, I'm still here.
Oh, okay, I hear you. Okay, yeah, I'll keep talking. Um, so yeah, I think it's a really sad story, but also a really powerful one. I think she showed a lot of strength, and that, she really did become the first domino to fall and inspired a lot of other survivors to come out. And, she's the woman that took down Prince Andrew. She took down royalty with her bravery and her story. That all being said, I think she was really mentally unwell towards the end. Um, I've talked to some survivors that knew her, and uh, a lot of the survivors that know her, they don't think it is they don't think like she was offed. They think it was legitimately a suicide. Um, they think, she was dealing with like, uh, she escaped Epstein's clutches through her husband, right? Like she met this husband when she was in Thailand. Like she had gone to Thailand, I believe, to do like this like masseuse school that Epstein and Ghislaine had signed her up to do, and she met this Australian guy while she was there, and then just ran away with him. I think she wrote a letter to Epstein and Maxwell, kind of saying, "I'm not coming back," and they were furious about it. But she escaped to Australia with this guy. Uh, but it sounds like he was a bastard too, and he was a domestic abuser, and then he also ended up with the custody of the kids, and obviously she loved her kids and wanted them. I don't know the ins and outs of how the dad got custody over her, but yeah, I think she was sad toward. I think she was just really unwell towards the end, and she'd been dealt with so much stuff in her life, and I think she gave in, and I think it's tragic. But yeah, yeah, I know a lot of I know when it first happened, my first gut instinct was, oh, this is sketchy. Like, oh yeah, yeah, another person suicided. But after talking to some people who knew her, uh, who are quite adamant that it was a suicide and it's kind of the product of uh, a life full of abuse and through to the very end with her husband. Um, so yeah, tragic. Um,
So, so we
if I could talk about one more story that's related to her real
go ahead.
quick, you mentioned Alan Dershowitz. I wanted to talk about him. Uh, so uh, so People who are invested in the Epstein story are probably aware of the footage of an ABC News anchor, Amy Robach, and she was caught on a hot mic, uh, venting about how she had the Epstein story years ago, and that ABC News quashed the interview that she had with Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and this was like right after Epstein died when she was caught on the hot mic, and that footage ended up leaking. And so yeah, it's like it looks really fucking bad. It's ABC News quashing an interview and silencing Virginia Giuffre, um, uh, and in that hot mic, at one point she's like, oh yeah, like in this interview, like Virginia, she talked about like Clinton and Dershowitz and all this, and so. Dershowitz came out after that, and Dershowitz, who with the bravado that he always has and the confidence, like he has such confidence about him, it's. I want to say it's almost convincing, but it's not. Yeah. I don't think anyone buys what he's selling, but like he like doubled down and he just admitted freely. He's like yes, I was part of ABC's decision. I called ABC News and told them, hey, like this isn't a trustworthy source of information. Virginia Roberts Giuffre, like you should not run this interview. This isn't like journalistically sound. Uh, so he openly admits that he was part of ABC's decision to quash the interview with her, and uh, and this interview took place in 2000. It would have been around 2015. Uh, and like Virginia would go on to say that at the time she viewed this interview that was conducted, she viewed it as a potential game changer of like finally getting to speak on a platform as big as ABC. But it was quashed, and that delayed her efforts significantly. And so yeah, so Dershowitz is, years later, after it comes out that ABC quashed the story, he doubles down, he admits he was part of the decision. But I went back in the archives and looked at him going on mainstream media at the time in 2015, and ABC and other outlets, like MSNBC, CNN, they weren't having Virginia Roberts Giuffre on, but they would gladly have Dershowitz on for him to plead his side of the story. And he kept saying over and over again, and I've done stories on this that people can look up. Over and over again, he kept saying, he's like, I'm not trying to silence her, like, even though behind the scenes he was, and he was just saying, he's like, I challenge her to come on your guys' shows, to come on the media and tell her side of the story on camera so that I can sue her for defamation. So he was challenging her to come on these shows and talk to them while behind the scenes making sure that that doesn't happen. And so basically, he was forcing her to not be on the media and then using that forced absence as a strike against her credibility. Like the slimiest tactics. It's, yeah.
Well, but I remember hearing an interview with her where she was scared to mention him by name and say that there was a big shot lawyer who was implicated, who was trying to bring her down legally.
Oh, yeah. He's
And
very litigious.
but I don't know what the laws are in Australia for something that happened in the Caribbean. So that's where people start getting confused, and they're like, "Well, if these people are so powerful, why didn't they just take her out like early in the game?" And do you know how finally Epstein got uh, prosecuted? Like who started the investigation? What made them go in? Because having worked in anti-human trafficking coalitions, they always said, we wish we could go in as early as possible, but we have to build a case. So then you find out that they allow for people to get abused for 5 years until they're able to get the big fish. Because if they went in early, they would only be able to get the smaller people involved. Was it something like that? Were they like working up to being able to catch Epstein? And why didn't they, if there is such a big intelligence, blackmail and manipulation stuff, why didn't people find him dead like Marilyn Monroe early on? Why drag it out? Why make it so suspicious? Same thing with Ghislaine. Like, what's going on that is all like goofy and tumbling over to get to this?
Yeah, so I think Julie K. Brown with the Miami Herald, she was obviously instrumental in breaking the Epstein story, especially bringing it to a wider audience. But I believe but that actually happened after his initial arrest and conviction. He was convicted in 2008 for the first time and got that sweetheart deal that Dershowitz got him, and like it's always fascinated me that it wasn't until like Julie K. Brown after like years after that happened where she kind of realized, this was kind of weird that he only got what like 13 months and he was allowed to leave the prison like 6 out of 7 days a week and then she built a story, talked to a bunch of survivors and stuff and created a story that was you know reached a wider audience and like it is kind of crazy that like when the story initially happened in 2008. 2008 was the conviction. He was first arrested in 2006. It is kind of crazy that story didn't burst into like the public consciousness more because it's a crazy story. It's you know a billionaire who's doing sex trafficking and the first time his conviction wasn't for trafficking. It was for uh, soliciting a minor for prostitution, which that like entire like legal phrase like frustrates the hell out of me because a child can't be a prostitute. Like prostitution like implies like consent, and a child can't consent. But but yeah, so that initial yeah, his initial run-in with the law, it started on a lower level. It was I think it was the girls in Palm Beach that he was grooming and having them come over for massages and like paying them 100 $200 to come over, well, and like paying them even more to like bring friends, like a pyramid scheme. It was when some of the parents of those kids I think were noticing them coming home with hundreds of bucks and maybe eventually telling their parents what happened and then reporting it to like the local police. And so yeah, like I think like the Epstein getting caught, it did start on that smaller local level, and yeah, it kind of snowballed into a thing. He ended up in court, and yeah, he got the sweetheart deal. Alex Acosta did uh reportedly said that he was told that Epstein belongs to intelligence, and that's why he got the good deal. And so, if your question is just kind of what, like how did a powerful person eventually have this happen?
For the 2019 one, not the 2000.
Okay, 2019. Okay, yeah, in 2019, well, I do think in 2019 it was a case of uh I think it was honestly a case of, let me figure out the right way to word this. In 2019, that was the first time I heard of Epstein. I'd never heard of him before. I think that's when a lot of people obviously found out about him, and it seemed like in some level it was a cynical play by the Democrats, which blew up in their face a bit because obviously a lot of them are implicated too. But Trump was president in 2019. Uh, the Me Too movement had just happened in 2017, so like obviously that had momentum, and it seemed like the Epstein story in part caught traction then because some of the Democrats are trying to use it as a cudgel against Trump. Uh, like the first time I heard about Epstein in 2019, uh, like I first heard about him in relation to Trump because that's kind of how it was getting sold at the time. They're like, oh, have you have you heard about Trump's, pedophile sex trafficker friend? And then he gets arrested, and then he dies in prison, like or in jail, just like weeks after he got arrested. And that's when the story really blew up and blew a lot of people's minds. Yeah, I mean, I one of the reasons the story resonated with me, obviously for many reasons. It's just depraved and mind blowing. But I actually remember one time in like 2016-ish. Uh, I'd estimate it was around 2016. I remember just like scrolling through Facebook casually and like came across a video for a second with spooky music, and it talked about Pedophile Island like. And I guess just at the time, like, I don't know, between the spooky music and something as like ridiculous and conspiratorial sounding as Pedophile Island, I just kind of like, rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. And then, yeah, and then years later in 2019, once I realized everything, when the Epstein story really blew up, it made me think back to that. I was like, oh, wow, that actually was a legitimate thing that I saw and dismissed right away as just like conspiratorial bullshit. And so, yeah, I know I kind of went off on a tangent here, but yeah, yeah, I think in 2019, yeah, on some level, the reason it blew up was because uh, it was supposed to be a cudgel against Trump, and then it blew up in everyone's faces because there were people implicated in this story all over the political spectrum, and even outside of politics, in tech, you know, in science, and in all these different fields. Yeah.
Jamie, as someone with a BA in communications and you with a master's in journalism, do you think that we have to be very cautious and very meticulous on what we say and how we communicate our 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 investigations and the things that we find? Because Whitney Webb has been they've been trying to debunk her by different outlets. Sometimes you have comedians or people who claim to be journalists and they're actually pundits, and they just go off on tangents or they use coded language that
Mhm.
pushes their political agenda. Do you think that there has to be a higher bar for people who are actually doing serious journalism versus people who are trying to get clicks or trying to get famous and are exploiting this tragedy? Because
Mhm.
I feel that it's a disservice to the survivors
Mhm.
to sensationalize their suffering
Yeah.
and to not be very careful on implicating people as well, because the right wing would say uh, it's very easy for men's reputations to be destroyed. All you
Mhm.
have to have, it's almost like a rapper that says, women lie. Um,
Yeah.
so do you feel like a sense of ethics and morality when it comes down to reporting things that sometimes gets lost?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to like my articles or like my video reports, I am very meticulous with my wording and try to be thoroughly sourced, and I think that's really important. When I'm talking, like in a conversation like this on a podcast where it's a bit more conversational, I think we need to give journalists a bit more leeway when it is just a conversation. You still need to be careful with your words. But yeah, like in my reporting, I am meticulous. I try and you know, I try my best to stick to the facts, and if I ever veer into speculation, I try to make it very clear where the factual reporting ends and where the speculation begins. And like I do think when you're covering these inherently shadowy elites, when we're talking about, billionaires and intelligence agencies and conspiracies, like it's so shadowy, and we're never gonna be able to have a complete evidence-based picture. And so like I do think we should allow ourselves some room to speculate and try and like logic our way through some of the gaps of information. But we should be careful about, yeah, we should be very clear about when we're doing that. When, you know, there needs to be a clear line between the factual reporting and the speculation and the kind of maybe like logicking your way through what you think is happening in the gaps of evidence. So, yeah, yeah, we we've talked a bit in this conversation about the current age of journalism, and again, like I wouldn't have tried to be a journalist in any previous era when you could only do it through, the mainstream media and go through like some, propaganda network. The fact that we can do it online now, like just anyone with a camera and a microphone and internet access can sift through articles and like sift through the archives, find things that have been buried by time, and we can reach out to sources. It's quite easy to connect with people via email. So like, there's so much journalism that can be done by any schmuck, and in a way that's really beautiful and great, and like I think that's a positive development, and like I think that's one of the say what you will about social media and the internet and its effect on society. It's been a double-edged sword, but one of the ways that I think has been a good thing is that, yeah, that it has democratized journalism, and like anyone can do this now. But that being said, that means that a lot of people are going to do it you know with more lax principles and ethics, and hopefully those people get weeded out, but they won't always, because a lot of people benefit from that kind of like shooting from the hip, and they do gain a following. So yeah, I mean, all I can do is try and stick to my ethics, and I think if you read my articles and watch my videos, you'll see that reflected. Uh, I try to stick to facts, and when I do veer into speculation, I kind of I make sure like the speculation is usually like in the form of a question, and yeah, so.
And then in this show, we tried to debunk conspiracy theories, and we started a conversation with conspiracy theory, and there is Jimmy Dore says that conspiracy theory is not really something bad. It's a theory that is based on the possibility of a conspiracy, such as the JFK assassination or even the Charlie Kirk assassination. So, but when it comes down to debunking them, we have to look at what has been offered. So, there's some TikToker guy that says that Epstein was obsessed with the occult, and that he would, from New Mexico, he would get rocks from the natives. From Mecca, he got a piece of the curtain of the Kaaba. From a Catholic church, he got a big bell. And then there was some other item that he was using in his temple or whatever he had. Have you come across anything like super goofy and weird that might point to them having some type of Masonic, satanic, or even their own mystical stuff that he was into, similar to like the Nazis or some type of weird group like that?
Yeah, I mean, there does seem to be some fascination amongst this echelon of people. There seems to be a fascination with the occult. I can't say it's something that I've gravitated towards much with my reporting. Just because, I mean, I personally don't believe that that stuff would actually work. But that being said, that doesn't mean that they didn't think it might work. And so, like, uh, I I I do think they probably dabbled in some of that stuff. But I can't say I have necessarily uh anything to add to that conversation. When it comes to the box, I've been talking to people who have experiences there, and they've said that they put on some like pretty occult performances there. And it makes sense. Again, it fall like that kind of stuff. It falls into the same category of like uh these people gravitating towards the most like edgy, grotesque stuff possible. So like, whether that's the most depraved sexual things ever, or just yeah, like, the allure of the edginess of occults and demons and all that. Like, so yeah. Obviously, like Peter Thiel has this weird obsession with the Antichrist, and he's going around giving like lectures on the Antichrist, which is bizarre. So yeah, there's definitely these people definitely have a fascination with it that I can't really explain, but
Can
it's
you tell
definitely
us
weird.
about Epstein's fascination with science and finance with Thiel and those other guys? And then do you know anything about the Zorro Ranch?
I can't. I you know I you know I have a layman's understanding of the Zorro Ranch stuff. That's another aspect of the story that is on my to-do list of things to look into. Because yeah, I know the Zorro Ranch is where really where it seems like a lot of his scientific endeavors were going on, and it sounds like there was some pretty nightmarish stuff happening there in the pursuit of science, and it's definitely worth looking into. I'm glad that there are some journalists out there who are really focusing on it, but I can't say that it's been my focus, at least not yet. It's the Epstein story is so massive, it's so macroscopic. There's no shortage of angles to approach it from, and yeah, so yeah.
What about all this science and finance stuff? Like again, is it because people who are very famous and wealthy are kinky, or is it because you've seen evidence of Epstein trying to have some transhuman, you know, creating a new race of people through his sperm and all this other stuff that has been coming?
Yeah, yeah. It all seems to come back to ego, right? Yeah. There's this like this like eugenicist mindset that a lot of these people seem to have, and yeah, they're all obsessed with spreading their own seed, and yeah, creating as many offspring as possible. So, it's morbidly fascinating to see some of that stuff and see Epstein pursuing that, and I think it makes sense given his what we know of his personality. And again, when you have that kind of money, uh, you know, it seems like he was just throwing it in a lot of different directions, right? And so yeah, like why why not throw a bunch of money at the prospect of you know living forever or uh, you know, or spreading your seed as much as possible and wanting to, what did they say? Like Genghis Khan is like related to like 5% of the population these days, just because he, you know, uh, raped so many women in his conquests, and then over time, population has expanded, and now they say like 5% of the population of the earth are descendants of Genghis Khan. So, I mean, they probably look to people like that, and they want to have the same ripple effect, uh, the same impact on the larger human race. It's an ego thing, isn't it? And yeah, and like wanting to live forever. If you're living that billionaire high life, yeah, like why why not want to keep a good thing going? So you know.
And I know we've taken a lot of your time, but last two questions. Have you found a direct line between Epstein and some of these powerful elite, um, almost like mythical families like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, or the CIA, Mossad, MI6, Interpol, that you can see because that also gets really muddy and there's a lot of conspiracies around that.
Yeah, it seems like he was very connected with the Rothschilds. I think there's even one of the emails in the files where he says to someone that he represents the Rothschilds. Uh, so yeah, there are definitely connections there. Alan Dershowitz says quite openly that he met Epstein through one of the Rothschilds. So so yeah, they're definitely implicated. I've seen some good reporting on that. Again, it's not the area of the story that I have thrown myself into, but I know some other great journalists have done great work on that specific thing. I've seen a lot of Rothschilds show up in some of my research into this quintessentially, which is this elite concierge firm. Uh, which is it's ran by Ben Elliot, who is the nephew of Queen Camilla, so Prince Charles's wife, the one who he married after Diana, and so and so Ben Elliot seems quite connected with a lot of the Rothschilds, and they seem to keep popping up in my research into quintessentially. Um, so yeah, they're definitely around. Yeah.
And the last one, I know you've been harassed by the people you're investigating. What do you do, or how do you stay away from anxiety or fear of ending up like Julian Assange, or like Matt Taibbi that ended up making friends with all the powerful people so he can be protected. What is your view on how far are you willing to go? And now that we've seen journalists being persecuted or even killed in other countries, uh, what makes you stay strong in your pursuits?
Yeah, I'll admit it's been terrifying. It's been scary, especially lately. Um, I'm yeah, it's obviously it's a scary thing to be antagonizing some powerful, insidious people and forces. Um, I take all of the, you know, I take all of the precautions I can that, that you can imagine, to keep myself physically safe. Um, and I guess I've been pursuing this career for some years now, and for a while I'd conceptualized the thought of the fact that like this could get dangerous, but and so like I had thought deeply about it, but it was still a bit in the abstract at first. Uh, but lately the feelings have sunk in lately, and like it's felt a lot more real ever since, like, I mean, I got this like legal threat from the box, and uh yeah, you do wonder what they're gonna throw at me next. I mean, the legal threat ended up being bullshit. I lawyered the fuck up, and I'm feeling a-okay legally, but it is scary. All I can do is take the proper precautions, and make sure that I say on platforms like this, I am not suicidal. I love my wife. You know, uh, yeah. I make sure my car is up to date and in good condition. I you know so yeah, I mean all I can do is just kind of keep at it. I think as scary as it is, I also think a lot of these people are paper tigers, and uh at the end of the day, they're still valuable humans. And I even kind of saw that with this cease and desist. It was kind of a fumble. They tried to threaten me with these, large claims of like $150,000 in statutory damages. But they didn't have they don't have the copyright registration number that's needed to levy such a threat. And so all they did was give me another piece of evidence to put in my story that, hey, I reached out to these people with questions and this was their response. It's only bolstered the story. I don't know if you're familiar with the phenomenon called the Streisand effect. Yeah, so it's the Streisand effect. People on the internet don't like when powerful people try and silence something and keep it down. It makes something explode. It can be like pouring water on a grease fire, right? So, um. So yeah, I'm glad you asked, because yeah, it is honestly it is scary. And so all I can ask from your listeners is for some support, and to make sure to check out my work and share it with friends and family if you think it's valuable. And if if it's within your means, like just to help support me financially, it goes a long way, because yeah, I am putting my neck out there, and I'm trying to fight the good fight. But uh, I do want us all to be in this together in the fight against these bastards. And I don't think there's any there's so much division in the world right now. And I just think there's nothing that could bring the masses together more than the Epstein story. It's one of the reasons why I throw myself into this story specifically, is like it if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that these elite
Well,
pedophiles sex trafficking children is bad and should be and we should fight that with all that we have. So like, if that needs to be the first step we take towards some goddamn unity, then yeah, I think it's a worthy pursuit. So yeah,
but
I just hope we can all band together in this fight. And I think we are. I think it's been positive to see people all over the political spectrum kind of st stand up and be willing to call out members of their own party and things like that
But
at the
Jamie,
cost of the
I'm worried that it's not catching on. That
yeah.
where's the protest? Where's the religious leaders standing up for the victims? Where's the people that say we got to save the children? Bush passed the anti-human trafficking law in 2007,
Hmm.
and you hear a lot of conservative pundits saying that that's why the border is being built and
Hmm.
the border is being patrolled, so there is no human trafficking.
Yeah.
You hear the celebrities say that they care about the children and they want to help, the women and all this stuff, and you
Yeah.
don't see the mobilization
Yeah.
that should happen. So are people just too overwhelmed with other things, or is it just not that big of a priority? What do you think is going on?
Yeah, I think definitely right that there's not enough, there's not as much movement as there should be. So maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I mean some of the signs are there. I mean, ironically, you're seeing it a lot more in other countries, more than here. Like some of the Epstein fallout, like in the UK, like Prince Andrew actually got arrested. Uh, Peter Mandelson got arrested, and the Prime Minister of the UK, he just resigned this. He just stepped down this week, and that was over numerous issues, but one of them was the fact that he was getting a lot of flack just for hiring Peter Mandelson into his cabinet when he knew that Mandelson had the Epstein ties. So and so that's my home country, the UK, and so we're seeing some Epstein fallout there. We're not seeing as much here, and you're right. So uh, the people here, I do think people here are infuriated and they're fascinated by it, and they're definitely like taking part in the online discourse. You're right that we're not getting in the streets about it, and that there should be more like actual mobilization. But I think the energy is there, and that energy can still be harvested, and yeah, and that's why I'm continuing to pursue these stories because uh you know obviously when the files came out in January, it was the biggest news for a good couple couple months there, and then obviously the war in Iran happened, and that kind of dominated the headlines for a while, and but I don't think the Epstein story and the energy behind it is ever going to die. I think it just goes dormant for a bit when there are other distractions, but it's always there ready to be rekindled, and I do think that energy can be harnessed and. And we'll see what happens. I don't think Trump has done a good job at obviously, him and his Justice Department. They haven't released all the files. They've only released about half of them. Um, uh, and all the Democrats in Congress seem to be uh, more in lockstep about releasing the files. We've seen some Republicans get on the right side on the Epstein files, like in Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. Uh, but I do think come election season, uh, if the Democrats do take control of Congress, I wouldn't be surprised to see more subpoenas happening, and we'll see what happens when we get a if we get a Democratic president in hopefully someone like a Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna's been really good on the Epstein files, uh, and so I do hope we can see more movement in this country on getting to the bottom of everything. I hope we can get the other half of the files released, uh, and yeah, and I'm gonna keep chipping away. Even just in the last few weeks, as my latest story has kind of broken out a bit, I've been getting emails, getting new leads on new angles to pursue. That I won't divulge the specifics yet, but I think I've got some more stories to break, and uh, yeah, so I'm gonna keep at it. My energy is still here and alive and well.
Well, please come and give us an update on whatever news stories you have. We've done a little bit on it. It's just it's been hard to get guests to discuss the subject, and
Hmm.
I still can't believe that Pam Bondi was ignoring all those survivors,
Yeah,
and
disgusting.
it was yeah disgusting and outrageous. And I started a petition on change.org about all the crimes that I could see, and I'm not even a legal professional, that the administration is committing by by hiding, by not pursuing this. It's almost obstruction of justice that is happening, similar to what happened with the Catholic Church. So it's just disheartening that it keeps happening in a lot of different fields. So I
Yeah.
want to thank you for your time, for your relentless pursuit of this, and it was, also kind of sad to see famous actors and musicians and people like that we all know and love being involved with this place, The Box. I recommend everybody looking at your article about it. In this station, we cannot promote financial contributions or products, but you have the free access on your Substack. Can you please share that with the public, or if you have a website or some other media available?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my name is Jamie Crawford, and yeah, I'm on Substack, I'm on YouTube. So you look up my name, Jamie Crawford, throw in the term Epstein or the box, and you'll find me. I'm on, yeah, Substack and YouTube are my main platforms. I'm also on Instagram and X. Uh, but yeah, yeah, go ahead and go check out my work and support it if you think it's valuable.
Well, have a good one. Please stay safe, and thank you for everything you do for the victims.
All right. No, thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.